Hello and welcome to episode 42 of Where Do We Begin? My name is Lucien Delfour and I'm a canoeist slalom athlete selected for the 2020 Olympic Games. I'll tell you a little bit about my life and I hope you enjoy this episode.
Thanks for that, Lucien. My name is Harper, and my co-host for the second week running, getting a bit of a streak now, is Lockie. How are you, Lockie?
Setting records, mate. I'm absolutely wonderful, thanks, Harper. How are you on this fine, beautiful day?
Oh, thank you, Matt. I am just swell and even better, I've got to say, for your use of adjectives that you gave to the listeners. I love that. And I love even more this episode with Lucien Delfour. Excellent stuff. Just a really interesting guy. And I've got to say, something I never thought I would say, with some of his canoeing chat, he really ruffled some feathers, I reckon. And if your feathers are particularly ruffled, if you found anything in this chat really interesting, remember to join the conversation, be a part of the community, because podcast, nothing without a good community. Hashtag WDWB Olympics on Twitter or wherever you want. That's hashtag WDWB Olympics. Lockie, what else can you tell us about Lucien, mate?
Oh, mate, he will be medaling at the Olympics. He's an absolute star of his sport. It was an absolutely phenomenal to have him on into the chat. And you know what? I reckon we just get straight into it. What do you reckon, Harps?
100% agree. Let's go. Now, we've been doing the podcast about 13, 14 months now, and when we started off, I definitely think it's fair to say we did not see ourselves getting a kayaker on the show, but that's what the Olympic series is doing for us. We love it, getting a whole different variety of sports, so I'm delighted to welcome onto the show a guy who will be representing Australia, of course, at the upcoming Olympics, Lucien Delfour. Welcome, Lucien.
Thank you, mate. Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely stoked to have you on, Lucien. What have you been up to? How's your Olympic preparation going?
So we've been training very hard in the last few weeks. So now we're just about ready to go to Europe, actually.
Yeah, so when are you heading over there?
So I'm pretty sure we're leaving on the 2nd of June. So that's the plan. Yeah, so we head off to Prague. We've got a World Cup there and then off to Leipzig for the second World Cup. And then after that, we're not too sure, but it's about a couple of weeks. We're training somewhere, probably in France, and then off to Japan.
Oh, well, that's unreal, mate. It looks like you got a good schedule planned out in front of you. But before we get into that, I think we need to ask, and could you explain a little bit about your sport? So for people that don't know, Lucien competes in the K1 event of the canoeing slalom. Is that how I pronounce it? Because I've got the worst pronunciation.
No, so, yeah, I do.
That's a shambles.
So yeah, well, I do canoe slalom. So specifically K1, which is kayak. So essentially, we're on white water, hence slalom, because we go through those gates. It's a bit hard to explain.
But then, how come you got into the sport?
Yeah, so essentially, when I was young, I can't remember if it was me or my parents, but essentially, I tried different sports. So I think I tried like basketball, maybe judo, and maybe some others, and didn't really like them. And my dad just got me to start kayaking, and I just hated it. So I tried it for a while, a couple of months, and I hated it. And I said, that's it. I don't want to do it anymore. So after 3 months, of staying at home, my dad just went and said, no, that's it. You're getting back in. Yeah.
My dad's they are great like that. I think we all have stories like that. I hated sport when I was younger too, and I got forced to do it. And also, just quietly, I could be wrong, but my eyes in the background, is that even if it's not, let's imagine it is that a painting of Mount Fuji in the background? Just really getting into the Japan spirit.
Yeah, my partner did it, yeah.
Oh, I'm loving the energies. He's prepared for the Olympics. He's got one of the symbols of Japan in the background. He's always preparing. And Harps, I think you have a follow-up question.
Yeah, and he's got the Paddle Australia shirt on as well for all the listeners. So he's repping it with pride already, a couple of months before. But just for the listeners, again, I think they'll be interested in kind of clearing up the difference between K1 and all the other Ks. So what does K1 mean for canoeing or kayaking in the Olympics?
So K stands for kayak, and C1 or C2 stands for canoe. In canoe slalom, we don't have K2, so there's only K1. There's only one person per craft. In the past, we used to have C2, so 2 people in one boat. But they got they sort of like got dropped out of the games. So now it's only just C1s or K1s.
Yeah, mate, that's absolutely unreal. And you're telling us off air the difference between canoeing and kayaking. Is it kayaking you're on your knees, or is it canoeing? Is it the other way around?
So canoeing you're actually kneeling, so you're on your knees, and it's pretty uncomfortable. Yeah,
I can imagine. I reckon your hip flexors would burn up.
Oh,
that is not a comfortable. That is not a comfortable position. I reckon. I don't even. I could not. I can't even cross my legs, I reckon, anymore. I don't know how we used to do it back in primary school.
Now, I think we've covered off on kind of explaining the sport, which is something that we've been doing for all our Olympian guests so far. I think the guests will be grateful to have it all cleared up. But now we've focused on that. But I want to move the focus. We sometimes ask guests about their early life, and most it's a kind of mundane answer. Not going to lie, like it's just like growing up in Melbourne, growing up in Sydney, whatever. But you are from the island of Tahiti and Papeete, I believe. I'm probably messing out that pronunciation just like Lockie on Slalom. But that's a bit of an interesting one. So French Polynesia, hey?
Yeah, I know. It's pretty bizarre. But so essentially, my dad was on there. My dad was a teacher. So they got the thing in France, like they had this deal where you could get a contract for like a certain amount of time in like overseas, so French Polynesia, for example. So he had a 4-year contract in Tahiti. So I was just born there, really. Like, we stayed there. I think I left. When we left, I would have been like 4 or 3.5, whatever. So I don't actually remember much of it.
So you left to France.
Yeah, so we went back to France, and then so I grew up in the south, like the southwest of France, in the countryside. It was pretty boring, to be honest. Like,
don't worry.
Shout out to the town there. A bit boring.
Boring.
What's the town called?
In France.
Yeah.
It was called Air Solador. Like it's a long name, but yeah, it was pretty tiny. Like it really was a small town. And then when I was 15, I would have been 15. I moved to Po, which was about like an hour away, and it was a much bigger town and
bit less boring.
It wasn't as boring, but it was pretty good for training there. So,
I don't know about you, Harp, so I'm sure our listeners they'll be wanting to check out these towns. Lucien has given them a big endorsement. I'm jumping through the walls. I want to be getting there, and I'll tell you what. And on Papeete, or however you pronounce it, I'll tell you what. I reckon after these Olympics, Lucien, you're going to put it on the map. The sport of canoe. I'm not going to pronounce the next one. I don't want to stuff it up again.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm looking forward to getting all that hate mail from the residents of that small French town. That'll be very nice. But so obviously, canoeing, it's not exactly the biggest sport in the world. Nothing like it. So you're part of the AIS, I believe. So you're not self-funded like some canoers or kayakers in Europe, especially.
Well, actually. Well, in Europe, it's a bit of a mixed bag, because you've got athletes. So it's essentially like Germany, Italy, Austria, and a couple of others. They've got this deal with the army where they join the army and they essentially get paid like full time. That system actually in France doesn't exist, and that was pretty poor. Really, it was pretty shitty. In Australia, we get money from the government, but that also depends on your results. So to get decent funding, you got to be top 8 at the world.
So it's pretty competitive then.
It's pretty competitive, especially since you would have seen videos of slalom, canoe slalom, and you know how like it can go to shit like pretty quickly. It's not like in all the sports you have a little bit of consistency, whereas in slalom it's always a bit of a this bit of a gamble. So I'm not saying like you can't perform, but it's always hard to guarantee a good result.
So does that mean that you're working as well as, because I know we spoke to a boxer last week and he's working as an electrician. Are you training full time, or do you also have a job?
I'm lucky enough to be able to train full time, and I've been training full time actually since 2012.
Oh, that's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's great.
But we saw that you've started studying at the end of last year, doing a little certificate.
Yeah, I did. So I finished that like 3-4 weeks ago. Yeah.
How'd you find that, getting back on the books?
Yeah, it was. Look, it could have been worse. It's a bit challenging. I'm doing all the assignments. But yeah, some of it was fairly enjoyable, and I did learn a few things. So it was good. Yeah.
So what was it? Was it sports coaching?
Yeah, sports coaching. Yeah. And luckily it was 6 months. Like it wasn't like a full year.
Yeah, that's good. But something else that we've been focusing on this Olympics series, it's really interesting. For Lockie and I, we kind of just enjoy the really normal sports, footy, cricket, bit of soccer here and there.
We're basic blokes. We're basic blokes.
Exactly. We're simpletons. Yeah, so it's been really interesting to get to know the kind of training routines of athletes from Taekwondo, boxing, and canoeing, of course. So what goes into kind of weekly routine for you? What do you focus on? Obviously, being full-time takes up all of your work.
Yeah, so as you mentioned earlier, we train in Penrith on the 2000 Olympic course. And that's one of the main issues. So that course uses pumps to get the water flowing, which costs a lot of money. So we're like quite restricted when it comes to training. So we've got like an hour 15 every day. And that's like during the summer usually, because of the games now, we've got a little bit more access to wild water. We have like a session pretty much a session every day. During the off season, we'd have like 3-4 sessions of wild water, and the rest is just like flat water, like training on flat water. So doing the mostly like physical, fitness session, and then sometime 2, 3, maybe 4 sessions in the gym.
Yeah, and I've noticed that you sometimes have to make do. So I saw that when you were getting your boats prepared for the Olympics down in Melbourne, you had to go down just to the river and set up a little course down there. You have to make the most of the elements, don't you? Yeah,
I mean, it's the biggest issue with our sport, like the actual access to wild water. So building a wild water course, that costs just so much money, and down in Melbourne, they don't have that luxury, unfortunately. So they have to make do with a much smaller river. But having said that, like for me, it wasn't too bad, for 2 weeks to do a bit of flat water or a bit of like moving water. But when you have to do that all year, it really sucks.
Oh, damn. Well, it sounds like it, Harp. Sounds like we won't be getting the chance to do this sport down in Melbourne. That's disappointing. I was really looking forward to training for will be 2024 Olympics or 2025. I don't know how they're going about it. But you touched on it a little bit before about how you do like a gym program and stuff. So what is actually like the physical training, like away from necessarily just like actually like practicing the sport? Like what's sort of like the gym routine and I guess the fitness that you have to like keep up with the sport? Because I can imagine it's quite physical.
Yeah. You said it's pretty physical. The thing with slalom is you got to, because it's so technical, it is physical, but it's so technical. You need to be able to balance it out, because if you work too hard in the gym, you're going to paddle like shit. And that's okay for a short time, but long term, you need to make sure you don't paddle too bad for a long period of time, so your technique doesn't go to shit. But having said that, like you do a fair bit of strength in the gym, because like if you want to be able to lift like more than your body weight, obviously.
Don't worry, I've seen the Instagrams. I've seen you smashing out 100 on the bench. Don't you worry about that.
Yeah, it took me years to do that. Like for a lot of people, it's much easier, but it took me years.
But yeah, so is it like sort of like, I know like in other sports where you have to like, do you have to keep under a certain weight just so that you're lighter in the canoe, or is weight less of an issue?
Yeah, no, you're right. So if you Google to get a picture of the boats, you'll notice the boats look like a banana. So we call it a rocker. So just like a surfboard. And because our boats, our crafts have got so much rocker, we subject to body weight. So the heavier that you are, like the more drag you get. And that's true for any kind of craft on the water, but it's even more so for our boats. And because we do wild water and a lot of like start and stop, the heavier you are, like the more, the harder it is essentially. Yeah.
And I imagine that like kayaking, it's not hasn't got a huge community, especially in Australia compared to a Europe or something. Of course, you spoke about on another podcast how Europe, that it's just kayaking is just a much bigger thing because they've got just rivers all over the place and it's just massive compared to here. But do you feel kind of especially bonded with your Olympic teammates or teammates in general for Australia? Because I know Daniel Watkins is the other man competing with you, and Jessica Fox as well for the women. So do you feel especially bonded with them because it's a small community, I guess?
Yeah, I'll say yes. The community is so small. Like it's even to be honest, like I would say we get to know the younger kids a lot better as well. So I remember my time in France as a junior or even younger. You didn't really get to talk to the top dogs at all. Like you wouldn't see them in the first place, but you never really talked to them. I think that's the good thing we have here. That is much smaller community, like you said, and if you want to, but normally you get to spend a bit of time with the juniors, and some of the juniors are allowed on our sessions sometimes. So it's up to you, but if you want to, you can take up that role of mentor and
mentoring. Yeah, I'll tell you, I'd be nervous if I'm like a 12-year-old and I'm looking, and next to me is the buddy like that's going to the Olympics, and I'm well, that's unreal. And I love how in sports like that, how like you have the access to like the champions of the sport, like you can like through the younger age groups. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Like when I was a kid, I didn't have that, and I just looking back, I just find it frustrating. Like the kids here can be quite lucky, really, because if they want to, they can have access, or they can talk to some real good paddlers if they want to. Yeah.
Yeah, so I touched on France briefly there. So what's the culture of kayaking like over there? Completely different to here. So, yeah, how did you kind of find it growing up in a much more kind of hustle-bustle kind of environment in terms of kayaking in France?
Yeah, it is a much bigger sport. I mean, there's there's quite a few rivers, so that helps. Clubs, and then I think that the reason it works better as well is the club structure in France is an actual club structure. Like you can join a club for a certain fee, but then you get essentially free. I wouldn't call it coaching. It will be coaching in some clubs, but you get support in some way. So it depends on the clubs, I guess, but at least you get like a couple of sessions a week. But that's how I started. So the clubs actually work, whereas they don't really, and that's, I think, they're our main issue, or one of the main issues. But and then I think the level, because there's so many more paddlers, the level is so much higher at a younger age. So when like you compete nationals, like the junior nationals, you compete against like 100 juniors, whereas here is like 20.
Yeah, it's interesting hearing those different systems and how you've experienced both. And I think what's something that's even more interesting for the listeners is that you've actually represented both Australia, who you're representing at the upcoming Olympics, and you've represented France in the junior level. So could you speak a little bit about that? How can you start off representing France and why you decided to make the switch to Australia?
So I raced for France at the Junior Worlds and the Euros in 2006.
Won a silver medal. Don't be modest. Don't forget you won the silver medal in the junior champs. Can't be leaving that out.
I did, yeah. No, that was a highlight. I was pretty proud of that. And then the year after, I wasn't about 6-7 months after, because I had the best results out of the other K1s, I was allowed to compete at the Youth Olympic Games in Sydney. So I think that was Jan 2007, and I just blew my mind. It was my first time out of Europe, because when I was fairly young, I hadn't really traveled, so we got sent to Australia, and just I know we stayed in Penrith, which kind of sucked at the time.
Not quite the nightlife out of Penrith.
It was still better than Po, especially in winter.
You're just smashing into these French towns.
Exactly.
No, Po is a pretty sweet town. It is nice, but in winter, it's still cold. So we got here in Jan, middle of summer, and we got to race the Youth Olympic Games. So we had such a good time, and I was like, fuck, I need to come back here. So I finished my studies, came back here, and that's when I decided to race for Australia.
Wow, that's really amazing. That kind of it sounds like a bit of a snap decision to move to Australia and represent Australia. Even, am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, looking back, I'm like, that's crazy. But I don't know. At the time, it was crystal clear. I knew that's what I wanted to do. I knew that was just it was what I had to do, and I just did it. Looking back, I'm like, no, that was crazy. I was only 20, 21, and moved here on my own. But I did have support to make the move. If my child had to do that, I'll be scared.
Yeah. I think everyone really agrees with you there. But do you think, looking back at it now, do you think what it would have been like representing France? It's probably a more competitive level, so it's probably much harder to get to the Olympics representing France and Australia. So do you look back and think what could have been if you were representing France now? Yeah,
I think it would have been, it's definitely harder. The density is so much higher. But whenever I do race in France, I'm pretty competitive with the other French guys. So I think I would have had my chance there for sure. But I think living and competing in France is quite hard, and just because of the funding thing, for example, it is terrible. It is just disgraceful how the higher level athletes get treated. There's so many literally poor, broke.
Really?
It's insane. Yeah, the system in Australia is pretty good in comparison.
It's interesting that you say that. You feel like there's not that, I guess, support necessarily in the other countries.
Yeah.
Especially I feel like Australia, for such a small country, we consistently do really well in the Olympics. Do you think it's because programs like the Australian Institute of Sport, the AIS, just offers such great support to its athletes? Yeah,
definitely. And maybe it's because there's not so many athletes in Australia compared to France. So maybe that's also why it works. But I feel like there's just so much support, much more support here in Australia than there is in France. I could be wrong. I don't know the numbers exactly, but Yeah.
Yeah, just from your experience. But I'll tell you what though, Harps, I don't think there's any questions though that even if Lucien was in France, mate, he'd still be mixing it with the best. Have you looked at his World Cup results? He's been absolutely smashing it. I mean, is it 3 silver medals from the World Championships?
I think I've gotten 3 silver medals at the World Cups.
World Cups, yeah.
My best results at the World Champs was 5th. That was in 2014. I've gotten 6 medals on World Cups so far.
Right, so doing pretty well for yourself. So what is it like competing on those big stages?
It's good. It's good. I think even with time, it's still a little bit a little bit scary, intimidating. You get more comfortable with age, but not that much, because I don't think we don't race a lot compared to, I think, all the sports, and especially like the tennis players, for example, who they be competing all year round, whereas like we train the whole year, and we have like these few races in European summer, and that's it. Like we go back home and go back to training. So we don't actually get to race that much internationally.
So I believe it's like you mentioned, and like you mentioned, 3 silvers and 3 bronze at World Cups. So does coming so close but not quite getting that gold give you extra drive to get to a gold medal in any competition really, but the Olympics more specifically, as it's so topical at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, look, sort of. It's always the goal to win, and unfortunately, it's come close a few times, but just really close. The games is going to be interesting. I haven't competed against the others like in 18 months, I think. So at least we get a bit of a warm up with the first 2 World Cups in Prague and Leipzig in June. So at least I'll get to gauge where I am at the moment. But it was the same in 2016. Like we had 2 World Cups and straight into games. I felt like that year I didn't really get to race enough. And this year is kind of the same, but for different reasons.
You've been in pretty good form though, leading into it for the qualifying in 2020. Like you won the Oceania Championship, is that correct? And also the Australian Open. Not the tennis Australian Open for our listeners.
Multi-calendar. It's so you're 33 now. It's 32. Sorry, you're 32 at the moment. So you've been at the 2016 Olympics, which we'll get into in a bit. Obviously, you're going to compete in these Olympics. I'm not too sure what's the kind of prime years of a kayaker and when kayakers the typical age for retiring. But how many Olympic cycles do you reckon you've got left in you? Do you reckon you're coming to an end, or really just hitting your prime now?
I reckon I've got at least one. I don't think I've got the patience for 2 more. And to be fair, like we don't even know what's happening for 2020 yet. Like I didn't hear any news. So hopefully the canoeing is still at the games. It's always been a bit tricky because like I said earlier, canoeing costs like so much money, and because of the quarter thing at the games, we don't really have that many paddlers. So the cost versus amount of paddlers is just, it's a bit outrageous.
So you think that it mightn't be an Olympic sport due to the cost? Is that what you're saying?
Well, we almost got kicked out in 2000. So, and the thing is, like all the courses that have been built in the last few years Sydney was actually probably the best design because it didn't cost much at all to build. But all the old courses since, like Athens, London, and even Rio, they've cost like way too much money. So we're gonna get kicked out.
Speaking of courses, because now you've brought up the cost, but what about how do you think the 2020 courses? Because you've seen the Tokyo course before, and I think you were quite vocal in that you weren't a big fan of it, and you weren't sure if it'd be ready for the Olympics.
How do you know that?
We've got
We
eyes
do
to the
our
ground,
research
mate.
here.
Yeah, we do our research.
It's fun. No, it's funny you mention that because like I don't remember being vocal about it, but indeed, like I think it's it's an absolute joke. Like
Really, yeah.
what you're going to see is not canoe slalom. It's too small. Like the thing is, grade 2, it's too small. Yeah.
Oh, really? So why they done that? Is it to cut costs or?
No, because the thing like still costs like way too much money, but it's just the way they designed it. I think they messed up the gradients. So it's either there's not. I think it's just the way they put the obstacles. So they use essentially it's a concrete channel, and you put plastic obstacles, and then you can move them around. So you can play with it, make it completely different. So that's the whole point. But it's just the way it's been set up. It was pretty poor. And we spent like 2 weeks there in 2019. And during that time, they didn't really adjust it. So we spent like 2 weeks of training on. It was a shit course. Yeah,
That's so disappointing though, because like the biggest, like one of the biggest stages of your sport. It's like the last thing you want is that the arena not to be up to standard. That's
for professionals as well. Like this is your full-time job, and you can't get a half decent course for like the biggest events.
I mean, yeah, it's a bit outrageous. Like considering the amount of money and time they spend like building that course and the results. The Japanese should definitely get their money back. Like it could be fixed potentially, but because we didn't get so normally on during the Olympic year before the games, you get official training camps, and as you can imagine, it didn't happen. So they were supposed to modify that course like during the camps, and we're not too sure what's going to happen. So that's also why, because the course was so small, like the water was so low, like so slow. Really, like I decided to change boats.
Oh, really? What? Yeah, why is that? Just did you decide to change the boat? What's sort of the thought behind that?
Well, in 2019, I went there with the boat I had at the time, and it just didn't work. I felt like extremely uncomfortable. Couldn't really get a good feel of the water. I was just struggling like the whole time. So. When I went back home, I decided that I would compete the Olympic selections with my current boat, and then after the selections, I would move to a different design, so my own design actually, and I'm glad I did. And thankfully, I had an extra year to get used to it.
Yeah, unreal. And geez, not just also designs his own boats, harps. He's a man of many talents. And look, we won't be complaining about the course when Lucien comes home with gold. I'll be happy with it then. But
yeah, I don't think he will be either. Fingers crossed. But so just throwing back, we're talking about the 2020 Olympics, or 2021, whatever you want to call it. But I want to speak just a bit about the 2016 Olympics, the other Olympics you've competed at. So finished 17th, I believe. Got a time penalty, which was a bit controversial. Do you mind going into that a bit for us?
Yeah, that's the touchy subject there. So the first run was it's a bit different in the games. It's like the old system. So in the quals, you've got 2 runs, and they take the best out of 2. So my first run was a bit average, I think, and I had a touch. So it wasn't great. And my second run was actually very quick. I remember, I think I was the fastest until the bottom section, and there was like a main, like the big drop at the end, and there was a bit of a tricky move on that drop, and then apparently I was overly tight on one of the gate, which I didn't think that was the case, but anyway, I was given a 50 seconds penalty, so that second run didn't count, obviously, so they took the first run, and it was too slow.
Yeah, that's disappointing because you finished 17th and top 15 went on to the semi-finals, so you just missed out. And you're in pretty good form, I guess, leading into that. Do you think like you were a good chance of at least making the final, if not medaling that year?
Yeah, I mean, like, especially looking at the splits, apparently I was pretty fast, but yeah, it's just stupid penalty.
And it's, I think you were saying, I've heard you say that an average race takes about 90 seconds. So 50-second time penalty, that's insane. Like, imagine if, like Usain Bolt, who can do like 100 meters in 9 seconds, imagine if he got like 4 seconds tacked on that. He'd be finishing last in every race.
Yeah, I mean, look, you miss a gate, it's over. So what they chose like 50 seconds, could have been 40. Doesn't really make a difference. But yeah, so you missed the gate or you go the wrong way. That's it. Like your race is done.
That's crazy. Yeah, because I was thinking like 50 or 15. I couldn't believe 50 seconds. That is ridiculous. But I guess,
and it would be shattering for you. Hey, like all the build up going into this competition, and so, like a pretty, I think it's fair to say, pretty unfair time penalty just takes it all away like that.
Yeah, you're right. Like it happens just like that, and you can't go back in time like that. That's it. Like it's done. It's pretty frustrating, especially since I was like, I think at the time I can't remember my world ranking, but
he's ranked number 3 now for our listeners. Ranked number 3 at the moment. Yeah.
At the moment, I think at the moment 7th.
7th.
But I think at the time I would have been second, but because I was literally number 1 at the games, so I had to be number 1.
Yeah.
So I was like the last off. It was pretty unreal.
Yeah, that's so disappointing though that happened, but still, it just would have been unreal to be at the games in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. I mean, I was after hearing your story about how you chose Australia before, I thought, geez, maybe you'll be representing Brazil at these Olympics, because it would have been an unreal experience going there.
Yeah, I mean, it did kill like a big chunk. It killed my experience at the games, like that
really?
race.
So you didn't really enjoy.
I still enjoy like the opening ceremony it's something like that was unreal. Like
yeah.
Even the closing ceremony was fun, but I think the opening ceremony was like it's something if you can experience it like once in your life, like it's good.
All right, well, halves extra motivation. So Lucien said he's competing at the next one. I reckon we'll go for our 2028 Olympics.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to be going on a world tour. We're going to be going to the small French towns.
I don't know what sport.
Hitting up the
halves. I don't know what sport we're going to be looking at, but they add in a few more each year. So look, they might have one for people. They might add a sport in for people without talent, and if they do, that is us two written all over it.
Exactly. We'd love to go to the podcasting Olympics. That would be great. But so 2016, I think we should move on for that, because it's probably not something that you want to go into too much. It would hurt for anyone a lot, and it's just shattering. So moving to the 2020 Olympics, 2021, whatever you want to call it. So what's the big goal for you coming to this? Is it gold? Is it gold or bust?
Well, look, gold would be nice, but what's crazy, to be honest, is at the moment the goal is to actually take part.
Just happy to be there.
If you get tested positive, like at the terminal in Tokyo, that's it.
Really?
So,
are you going to be rocking up in a hazmat suit?
Yeah, pretty much. So yeah. At the moment, the goal is to be cautious, like safe, to not get infected, essentially, and like train properly, obviously. But it's really frustrating because in Rio, like I don't know if you remember, it was like that Zika virus thing.
Yeah,
I don't.
That was huge.
Yeah, like I wasn't too worried at the time because there was nothing about being not allowed in the village or whatever. But
yeah.
This time it's different. Like even if you're fine, like you don't show symptoms, you're not sick. Like if you test positive, that's it. It's finished.
And I'm just having a look now. Japan is still getting 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 cases every day, and obviously you're going to be in Europe just beforehand, where the virus definitely isn't over there, or it's not over anywhere, but it's still running pretty wild in certain parts of Europe. So. Are you feeling a bit scared about it?
Look, I don't really feel confident about it. Yeah. going to try and be smart. So just limit the amount of exposure, limit the traveling, and just, it's not going to be, it's good. I think it's going to feel like quarantining like the whole time. Yeah.
Right.
So it's not very exciting. No.
How much of the kind of how much of the precautions that you take when you're over in Europe and in Japan, but especially over in Europe, are going to be your decisions, and how many are like enforced by governing bodies and the certain competitions and stuff? Are they really strict on it, or is it a personal decision for you and some other people might just run wild in Europe doing what they want?
Look, I'm not 100% sure, but I know it's going to be strict, so there will be rules. From what I was saying, that the Euros, like a couple of weeks ago in Italy, they pretty much had to wear masks like the whole time. So they could take off the mask like when they got in the water, and they had to put it back on as soon as they got out. So stuff like that. That's pretty strict, but it's I think it's going to be normal, I guess.
Yeah, mate, 100%.
Well, it's normal for them. Like for us, it's we've had it like pretty good.
Yeah, well, we've been super lucky, and I guess just do you think that the Olympics being delayed, has that hampered your preparations at all, or has it been a good thing and potentially giving you more time to train, or has it sort of stunted your preparation a bit?
I'm not sure. It gave me more time to get used to my boat, which was good. But having said that, like that year, like last year, I was doing pretty well. Like I raced really well selections. I was pretty fit. I was really eager to compete at the games. I don't know. I don't know if it helped me. Like I used that extra time to focus on fitness, because it was always a weakness for me. But I don't know. But personally, I would have preferred to race last year.
Yeah, and how much racing did you do last year? Because obviously, being in Australia, it's just being in Australia, it's like we had strict lockdowns for a certain amount of time, but not so much compared to Europe. So did you get to race at all?
Well, no. So we raced the Oceania that was in Auckland, and then the Australian Open in Penrith, like at the end of Feb. And that's it. That was it. So we had a team announcement, and then I can't remember, I think it was like 2-3 weeks later, the games were postponed, and that was it. So we didn't race like that year.
Yeah, geez, I guess it will be hard, sort of, but at least you got a couple of races leading up to the Olympics, mate. And I saw you smash it. I'm predicting all gold in the 2 World Championship, I think, events you said you had on, and of course at the Olympics. I've just got a quick question. We covered the reffing a bit before, but I know I think it was 2017, you wrote like an open sort of letter, I guess, explaining like your frustration with, I guess, the judging in your sport with the flags. I think there was an example in a race in Europe where it was said you touched a flag, then video replays showed that you didn't, and you weren't given the benefit of the doubt, which the rules say. Could you please, I guess, if you're happy to talk about a little bit about your frustrations regarding that?
Yeah, so the thing is, that wasn't the first time. So in 2013, I also got given a 50 seconds penalty, which I didn't think I deserved. The video at the time was really unclear as well, and that's what happened at the games as well in 16 and then 17. The difference, I think, was 2017. So that was in Prague. That was during the World Cup. It was the final run, so I should have been third, and they gave me the touch at the end of the run. And the video, in this case, the video was so clear. They could have used it like no problem, but they decided not to for like no reason. That's why I wrote that thing on Facebook, and it was like crazy. And the other crazy thing as well is one of my competitors, Yuri Prishkovec, a local, was given a touch as well on the exact same gate, but his came off, mine didn't.
So do you think that's because he was a local?
I don't know, potentially, but I didn't think, because I saw his run, I didn't think he touched it. It was crazy, like how we got treated differently. That's the thing. So it was a judge's call, like maybe they saw it, maybe they didn't. But the problem was the way the penalty was analysed. So you look at the two videos and you can clearly see that in both cases we didn't touch the gate, but the fact is, like, mine stayed and his didn't.
Yeah, sounds like the judge took a quick stop before going to Prague. He went to Amsterdam before coming to judge the event.
I shouldn't say that about judges. Like, it's, they do it for, like, we were lucky to have the judges. And what was frustrating is the way the protest system just didn't work. They could clearly see, and that was the bullshit part of it. Like, they could see I didn't touch the gate, but they just wouldn't do anything about it. So I was like, we could not, as a team, could not understand. Like,
have you seen improvement in the sport in regards to that, in regards to the officiating, since, like, you sort of penned that letter over the last couple of years?
Yeah. So during that, like, even the following competitions, I remember there's a few things that happened even at the Worlds, but after that, I think in 2018, it was pretty good. Like, there weren't too many issues, I don't think. So I'm not too sure what they changed, or if they just they started to actually follow the rules, because that was the thing in 2017. They did not follow the rules. Like, it was clear violation, but yeah.
Oh, that's just sounds disorganized. Really, it just doesn't sound like people are getting what they deserve, clearly. But I'm really interested to know when you've kind of released these public statements and vented your frustrations, have you received direct responses from governing bodies, officials, anyone that's at a fairly high up kind of status?
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I did. A few days later, I got a fairly not an angry email, but yeah, I got an email from the ICF, so the International Canoe Federation. So I got an email from them, and they weren't too happy about it.
What did they say?
They try to explain why the penalty stood, and they also, but that's the thing, they also said that sometimes there can be wrong calls. So there was it's a bit frustrating, because they in a way they kind of agreed that they could have messed up, but essentially it was like they said that you can't write that, it's putting the ICF into disrepute, and we don't want to take sanctions against you. So it was a little bit intimidating. But I don't think I should have done that, like the way they did it. But
yeah, it is what it is.
So that is, I guess, can't change it now, but it's just not very good to see such kind of high-ranking governing bodies and officials treat their athletes like that. But we've covered a whole lot of fascinating stuff in it, in a pretty broad range of topics. So a question we always ask our guests just before we get to our final little fun segment of the show: have you got a life philosophy, Lucien? Any kind of mantra or quote or kind of principle that guides your decisions throughout your life and career?
Oh, absolutely not. I can't really think of one. No.
Fair enough.
That's all
just
right.
Kind of take it all as it comes.
You mean like a motto, or just like a way of life?
Yeah, kind of, like a motto or a kind of a principle, if you know what that means, or yeah.
Like,
if you haven't got one, you don't have to answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never really thought about it. I think I've got a few principles like in, probably in life or like within sports. I don't know if I've got one that really, I would say, I think, no, actually I would say this, like in, when it comes to sport, we didn't really touch on that, but when I started, I was really shit. And that's why I stopped, because I hated it.
Sounds like me at most sports, except I don't start again.
Yeah, like I was not talented at all. And funnily enough, part of my studies was talent identification. So in my case, I was not talented at all. Like if you had tested me or assessed me at the time, you would have, noticed that I wasn't good enough. So I think I would say this in a case of sports. You just got to be, as an athlete, you got to be mindful of talents or like all the talented people, and try not to be frustrated, because like for some people it just takes longer to get better in any sport. I wasn't gifted. Like it just took me so long to get to a good level, and then suddenly it was like I was actually paddling well. Sometimes you just need a bit more time than the others, and that was a frustrating bit when I was like 15, 16. When I moved to Pro, when I joined this high level junior program, I was training with people like better than me, but I thought I was okay. I thought it was good, but some of them, like most of them, I was probably the youngest, to be honest, but they just paddle better, and it took me quite a while to catch up, and that was like quite frustrating. But yeah, I would say you got to be patient. And we've lost in Australia. We've lost quite a few paddlers because they made a team in juniors and they could not make the team in under 23s. Under 23s is such a huge step up. It's just full of frustration and disappointment. For years, you're not going to make the team. And that's quite hard to accept. And it was quite hard for me because in France, like you went from juniors to under 23s, it was savage. Like the difference of level was absolutely savage. So
it's pretty, it's really, it's really inspiring, mate.
Yeah, it's that Lockie's got spot on there. Really inspiring attitude to have, kind of not being the most talented athlete out there, but now you're like competing right up with the kind of big stars of the paddling world, and it's just amazing to see. I hope all of our listeners can take a little bit of inspiration or motivation out of it. But
I definitely have.
Same here, 100%. But of course, we've got to get to our final segment. It's a very fun, very famous segment. It's the Where Do We Begin quiz. So, Lucien, Lockie, you know the drill. I've got 5 questions. They're all related to Lucien and his career, his life and career. They've got a loose connection, no pun intended, to his life and career. So, are you ready to get into it, guys?
All right.
Let's go.
Okay.
Always happy to win.
Your name is your buzzer. So we'll start with question 1. So am I correct in saying that your birthday is the 22nd of December 1988? It's not for the points, but is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so 22nd of December 1988. So I'm going to read out the lyrics to the song that was number 1 in Australia on the 22nd of December 1988. So you two, whoever wants to buzz in first can buzz in whenever you want. And if you get the right answer, you get the point.
Has to be a Christmas song, doesn't it?
We'll see how it goes. So we'll start. I'll start. I won't sing, but I'll read it. So here's a little song I wrote. You might want to sing it note for note. Don't worry, be happy. In every life, we have some trouble. But when you worry, you make it double. Don't worry, be happy. Don't worry, be happy now. Don't worry, be happy. Don't worry, be happy.
Lockie?
Don't
be happy?
Incorrect. I'm surprised you two haven't got this before. It's a pretty iconic song. Lucia, do you want to have a crack? Do you want me to keep reading?
It's just I can't.
You're really not going to gain much from me reading more. I think if you haven't got it now, you're not going to get it.
I can't remember the singer.
Well, I'll just give you the answer. It is "Don't Worry, Be Happy" by Bobby McFerrin.
Jeez, as if you didn't pay Be Happy.
Well, it's not the name of the song, is it? No. Everyone knows "Don't Worry, Be Happy" is the name of the song, so I can't give you the point.
Harper, I reckon you're mates with the bloody officiating team in canoe. Bloody hell, mate.
Well, we'll put a poll up on our Insta story for our listeners so they can check it out there. What do you think, guys? It was number one for 6 weeks in Australia. It was a pretty big song. I'm surprised you don't know it. It's got a very catchy kind of whistling hook a bit later on. But anyway, got a question 2. We got off to a flying start here, guys. We're to question 2. Papeete, is that how you pronounce your birthplace, Lucien?
Papeete, yeah.
Papeete, okay. So the distance from Papeete, the capital of French Polynesia, to Tokyo, of course, where you'll be playing competing in the Olympic Games, is 9,486 kilometres, and it's about 14 hours by plane, if my research is correct. So going directly from Papeete to Tokyo, how many countries would I fly over?
None.
Lucien's got it absolutely correct. All right. He's got the first point of the quiz. I like to see that. Lucien gives a
little fist bump. Nothing little about it, mate. Nothing little about that big. That was massive.
He won't be able to wipe the smile off his face for the rest of the night, I can tell. But anyway, moving on to question 3. So, I believe you won one of your silver medals at the World Cup at Markkleeberg in Germany. You won it on the 1st of September 2019. So, something else that probably it's not very significant, but something else that happened on the same day was entrepreneur Jack Dorsey having his Twitter account hacked. So can you tell me who Jack Dorsey is? What is Jack Dorsey known for?
Mate, did you just make this person? I'm going to say he's an entrepreneur. He's an entrepreneur. That's what he's famous for.
I'll lead to something a bit more specific. I'll give you a clue. People found it a bit ironic, I suppose, that he had his Twitter account hacked.
Is he the head of Twitter? Owner of Twitter?
He's the CEO and co-founder of Twitter. He's got the point. I had to give him a bit of a nudge, but I'll pay that one. He's leveled it up 1-1. Anyway, move to question. Yeah. I don't think Lockie had any chance of getting that without the clue, but whatever. So question 4. So another one about your birthday, your 9th birthday this time, the 22nd of December, 1997.
Great day. Great day.
Great day. I bet Lucien was partying hard.
Was that one of your more memorable birthdays? Your 9th?
I honestly cannot remember.
He was partying so hard he can't remember a thing. But anyway, on that day, which 2 retired figure skaters pre-recorded a show to air on Fox the next year?
What? Michelle Wu? I don't know. That's not the only figure skater I know.
I think you've probably heard of these, at least one of these people, I think.
Blades of Glory, Will Ferrell.
I think if you asked most people around town to name 2 figure skaters, they'd name these 2 people. There was a movie about it a couple of years ago. Okay, no, you don't look very hopeful. It was Nancy Kerrigan and, of course, Tonya Harding.
Never heard of them before, mate.
Never heard of them? Oh, there was a massive thing about Tonya Harding, basically hiring someone, allegedly, to, chop Nancy Kerrigan in the ankles or something, or chop her in the legs to get a bit of...
She got that tactic from Blades of Glory, I can confirm.
Yeah, well, anyway, this quiz is not gone too well so far. I think I might have made it a bit hard. But anyway, we move to question 5. It's 1-1. This question, either of you can still win. One of you could win big because it's a who am I question. So I'm going to go down from 5 points all the way down to 1 point with a series of clues, of course, leading to who I am. So once you buzz in and get it wrong, you can't buzz in until the other person gets it wrong. So we'll start with a 5-point clue for the who am I. I was born on November 11, 1974 in Los Angeles, California, and have an estimated net worth of almost as much as Lucien makes from his canoeing, 330 million Aussie dollars.
Doing well for yourself, Lucien.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll move to the 4-point clue. I'm the only child of Ermelin, a legal secretary, and George, a comic book writer of Italian and German descent. Bit tricky there. I'll move to the 3-point clue. So, I began my career by appearing in television commercials in the late 1980s and had my first major film role as Tobias Toby Wolf in 1993's This Boy's Life. Should I move it on to the 2-point clue?
Move it on.
Okay, I'll move it on. It's for 2 points. I received my first Academy Award in 2016 when I won Best Actor for my role as Hugh Glass in The Revenant.
Lockie. Leonardo DiCaprio.
Oh,
He has got it absolutely correct. Leonardo DiCaprio, of course, same initials as Lucien Delfour. LD. He's a great man, almost as great as Lucien. So he's got the points. Lockie's won at 3-1. Congratulations, Lockie. Good stuff. Round of applause for Lucien. The crowd goes wild. Anyway, I think we'll leave it there. So, Lucien, it's been a pleasure having you on. It was really interesting to chat to you. And thanks again, mate. It's been awesome.
yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. No, it was great. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much. It was an absolute pleasure, mate. Can't wait to watch you win gold at the Olympics. I'm looking forward to the shout out too. An absolute belter of an episode. Absolutely love that, Lucien. Absolutely smash that. Thank you so much for coming on. It was an absolute blast.
Lockie, I'm going to make a bold statement here. Bold, big statement. I reckon that might have been the best kayaker we've ever had on the show. Do you agree?
You do realise I'm on the show, don't you,
Yes.
Harps? Haven't you heard about my legendary 2K kayaks over an hour?
Yeah, well...
Set serious records with that.
Oh, yes, you did set serious records indeed. Famous, of course, but I want to keep our guests happy, you know. I've got to give praise to the guests. But anyway...
Speaking of guests, speaking of praise, let's chat a little bit about our latest little initiative. So rather than taking on any sponsors at the moment, we've just set up a little buy us a coffee. So basically, if you have any spare dollars, if you've got up on the pokies, if your grandma's giving you $20 for your birthday, and you got a little bit of money around the house, and you want to donate $1, $2, $3, you know, we'll even take $4, and you want to support us, please just go down to the link that Harpsy Boy will tell you.
Yes, I will tell you it because Lockie seems to have forgotten. It's buymeacoffee.com/where do we begin. Simple as that. Buymeacoffee.com/where do we begin. That's no capitals at all lowercase. There you go. We'd really appreciate it, guys, not taking any shit advertising, blood money, anything like that. We just appreciate all the support we get for giving you this little free quality service that we think it is. So yeah, it would be really appreciated.
Yep, you summed it up well there, Harps, and just thanks to all the listeners again, and looking forward to the episode next week.
Oh, another Olympics episode and another awesome episode. See you then, guys.
Thanks for listening.